Hey everybody, Tchadas here, host of Our Native Land, and welcome to the show. Okay, today I have Alicia and Lexie Obey, and they are the hosts of the Comeback Podcast, and it focuses on offering a platform where Indigenous individuals can share their comeback stories in a judgment-free zone. It also highlights Indigenous excellence in hopes of showing young listeners that they can accomplish anything. The podcast is a branch of work under the Comeback Society, which Morrow launched following a car crash 5 years ago. And her sister Obe works in child welfare, especially with Indigenous youth. Together, they are working towards using their podcast platform to revitalize traditional oral storytelling. Welcome to the show, ladies.
Hi, thanks for
Thank
having us.
you.
Awesome. Okay, so let's get right into it. Can you first go back, Alicia, and tell me a little bit more about your story? You had a life-changing event that happened and brought you to creating the society and ultimately the podcast with you and your sister.
Yeah, so back in 2015, I was involved in a car accident, and the car accident itself wasn't bad, but the treatment and the recovery, I've undergone 3 surgeries, and I'm now in a state of permanent disability. And I'd really struggled with my new normal, and being somebody who was always on the go and utilized sports and recreation and stuff like that to deal with my traumas and stuff. And so learning that I had to stay still and to, learn that I wasn't able to do the things that I used to love to do was really tough. And I felt very alone. And so being off work, I've been off work for 5.5 years now. And I had no idea, what was the direction of my life supposed to go. I was in university. I was supposed to get a degree. I had a whole plan, and that plan kind of came to a halt. And so I had to really think about, what did I want? How did I envision my life? And what kind of things can I do for me and my healing journey? And so I created the Comeback Society after I'd laid tobacco, and I said a prayer, and I'd asked for, some guidance in my next steps. And I ended up coming to this realization that I needed to create a community. And I was working in nonprofits at the time of my accident, and I really wanted to continue with that work. And so I kind of created the Comeback Society as a means of sharing stories. And so they were written stories, and just weekly. And we kind of started selling clothing and just like kind of creating like an online community. And then realizing, like, I was in university, this was picking up and like taking off faster than I could breathe. And so I had to really like think about, what was I doing? I kind of just went with it, and I was just going with it. And like,
Yeah.
it was like roller coasting. And so I ended up taking a step back. I finished my degree, and then I connected with my sister Lexie, and I said, like, Indigenous, both of us are Indigenous. And so we really wanted to, pull our own culture into it. And the podcast kind of came to be under the Comeback Society, where we offer like ribbon skirt making classes, virtual. We're getting to it. We're working on all of it. But so, yeah, the podcast was kind of born through the journey of figuring out what I wanted to do with my life, knowing that I wanted to create a community. And this was the best way that we kind of knew how.
Well, it sounds like it's successful, and that's the great thing about resilience with people is when you're kind of down in the slums and you don't know what to do, that's where some of the best ideas and visions come to life.
Mm-hmm.
So congratulations on that. That's for sure.
Thank
Uh,
you.
Lexie, can you tell me a little bit about your educational story? I know we talked last week when we first met on Zoom there, and I understand you were wanting to be a lawyer. You're kind of going down this lawyer path in your earlier years, and then you've kind of taken a shift and you altered your education and your career so far. Can you tell me a little bit about your story?
Yeah. So, as long as I can remember, education was always like super important. I never questioned whether I was going to go to post secondary. Me and Alicia are both raised by a single mother who went to university when I was quite a small child. So I always saw her working hard, studying, going to school. I would stay up late with her and help her study for her exams the next day, and then working 2 jobs. And so I kind of had that role model to follow suit. I also had this narrative at a young age that Indigenous people weren't necessarily successful, because I saw within my own family, I have a lot of intergenerational trauma that has affected them in different ways. And so I had this idea that I was always going to be a lawyer, because when you think of success, what does like a successful job look like? And I was
Yes,
like,
like an Asian family wanting their kid to be a doctor, right?
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. So I was like, I'm going to go to law school because that's what success is. And
Yeah.
I'm going to make a lot of money, and I'm going to do things that people in my family haven't done yet. And then held on to that idea for a long time. That took me to post-secondary, where I got my bachelor's of human justice. I convocated in 2018, where I learned about the criminal justice system and all things legal and social justice, etc. Even after I moved up to a campground in northern Saskatchewan where I worked, and I was studying for the LSAT at the time, still with this idea that I was going to become an Indigenous lawyer. I was going to go to law school at UVic, and I was going to pursue treaty law and like land entitlement law, which I was interested in, but it wasn't like, I was still questioning whether that was the right idea. While I was at the campground, this organization would come up to take their kids on camping trips for the week. And so while I was working there, I got to hang out with them, and I was like suddenly surrounded by like Indigenous youth in the outdoors. And I moved back home and I was looking for work, and I found myself then working for that organization where I work now. Mm-hmm. I work in a residential treatment facility center, which is essentially a group home with mainly Indigenous youth. Okay. And I think through working there, I've like slowly realized that like sitting at a desk, looking at like legal papers, reading all day, studying, that idea of success like does not fit my own spirit and my own journey. I'm very much so like a kid at heart. And so I do well with kids now. And I never knew I liked kids before, but I really do. And I really like teenagers. And I think their brains are so malleable, and they're like so receptive of teachings. And so that's kind of shifted my perspective in the last 2 years, has been working at this organization. And I also have this other side of me that's like wild and likes adventure. And so I'm taking time in the next few years to explore what that means. And then I've recently found a master's program out of the US called Indigenous land-based education, where you go out and you learn from different communities on the land about Indigenous education, different teachings, and then in turn you have like a master's of education at the end. So I think those two things really bring together like the parts of me that I enjoy.
Yeah, well, that it's a huge testament to the idea of what success is, and then actually digging down deep and find out what you're passionate about, and to actually go and find that in the field and find an education relatable to that. It's a huge thing that I don't think was possible, 10, 15 years ago. I think the specific types of programs that are being offered in the education system now is really, really beneficial to anybody. So I'm happy you found something that you like. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So let's go back and talk to Alicia here. And I kind of want to know, why do you think it's so important that you and your sister created this podcast together? What benefits is it having for your well-being, especially during a pandemic? We have some mental health concerns for a lot of people, but what is it being for your well-being as well for people who are listening? Well, what's the goal, and why do you think it's so important?
Mm-hmm. So I think it's really important for my sister and I to be creating this, because not only with the pandemic, recently I gave birth to a son. And so with
congratulations,
the pandemic,
we can see him.
Thank you. Yes. And so, I didn't I had this ideology in my head that I was going to be able to be surrounded by family and be, with the close people. But with this pandemic, we haven't been able to. And so not only is it my own sister time and being able to sit down with her weekly and really communicate, not only, and it's challenging us to continue to have these conversations that we might not necessarily have, if she was just here visiting. And so I think really that it's so important for him, for her and I, to be doing this, so that we're pushing ourselves and challenging us in this time, but also for Hunter, to be able to listen to these conversations. He is so young, but he is always usually near me when I am recording. And so it really, he might not be able to understand, but he's able to be listening, and he's exposed to these types of things. And then with, the people who are listening, I think we've had so many people reach out, and some people from the US have reached out to us, some people from the Yukon, and just all across Canada, saying every Sunday is just such a great, I look forward to listening what you guys are creating. You guys are doing such important work and stuff. And so, I didn't realize the impact of what we could be doing just with our little sister talks that we wanted to have. But realizing that we are reaching a great amount of people, and people really are sitting there, and they always say we believe that we're sitting there with you. We know who you are, but we have no idea who they are. And so that's really But I like, it's so beautiful to see what we could create with just, technology. And then having that with our well-being. I mean, mental health is a huge issue right now in the pandemic. And so being able to offer just that 1 hour a week where we're able to have those, really heartfelt conversations, the tough conversations, but the needed conversations. And then we always, put a spin on it of where it's, we laugh
Yeah.
and we really try to make it funny. So
Yeah, absolutely. I listened to the last episode, and I can tell you guys have a good time laughing with your guests. So I'm looking forward to that as well too. We'll get into that a little bit later. But I was kind of curious. You mentioned you're having these conversations with your sister, but if she was there in person, you probably wouldn't have had the
Mhm.
same kind of conversation. What do you think it is about being behind a mic and having a goal of a conversation that changes your dynamic with your sister? Like, why do you think that is?
Honestly, I think it's just, we would have these types of conversations where it would be like, this is the way that we feel about a certain topic, but it would never be to the point of where we have to articulate our thoughts, that we have to really push ourselves out of our comfort zone to think, and then to, we always reflect too on all of the episodes. And so really like pushing ourselves and always like finding new lessons and new, just knew everything. I think that's kind of what the mic and this podcast is really doing, because, our conversations are meaningful when we just hang out. But I think this just brings a whole new perspective into it. And knowing that we have people listening, and knowing that, there's so many people that have these stories that want to share. I think it's just a very beautiful and fulfilling, and like, yeah, we're just growing through it.
That's awesome. Now, it's kind of related to what we're already talking about. We touched a little bit, but can you tell me a little bit more about the format of the show? What can people expect when they listen to the show? I know I've listened to it already, but maybe give me an idea what I'm going to be expecting as I'm going to be on the show next week, which I'm very excited about. So,
Yes.
what if somebody's going to tune in, beforehand? What are they looking for, and what's the format?
So just like, if just imagine you're having a conversation with your sisters or your aunties or your cookums or your cousins, and you're just
And
sitting there and
Cookum's
just,
grandma, right?
yeah,
Okay.
cookum or mushums. So yeah, just kind of like sitting there, and like it was almost like we wanted to revitalize like the kitchen table talks that you would have at your grandparents' houses, and just to be able to talk about anything in that judgment free zone, and to be able to say anything, and just know that you're heard. And then just to have it like a fun, because us as Indigenous people, we utilize humor in a lot of our, in a lot of the darkness that we've had faced. But humor is what kind of gets us through. And so we really wanted to kind of create that, where we're having those tough conversations, the realities of what, Lexie's and I's lives were growing up. But then put that spin on it, like where it is humor. And we have to always disclose that, like, okay, it's a tough topic, but it, like, we're dealing with it in our own way. And so that's kind of the format. We don't really do any editing. We really just sit there, we crack a Pepsi at the beginning of the show, and and we just kind of sit there, and we want to laugh, and we want to allow people to be them best, like to be their best selves, to say whatever they want to say, and not have any boundaries or restrictions.
And you know what? I can completely agree about the humor thing, because unfortunately, a lot of the time in the media is, a lot of the time when there is Indigenous stories on hand, it usually has to do with some sort of negative impact. And so most of the people that are on the camera talking about the situation are very serious. So it gets this notion of this seriousness about talking about Indigenous topics, which at the same time is great and it's important, but to laugh about it as well, I think is vital. And you guys do a great job at doing that.
Hmm.
So.
Thank you. Yeah, and then I just want to say too is that's, we in the media, we usually hear about the bad things about Indigenous people. And so we really wanted to create a space that we wanted to give Indigenous voices just a place wherever they are at their lives. It doesn't mean that they have to be, the top scholar. It could be that they're in university, that they're kind of struggling, that they're dealing with the realities of this world. And we're just going to meet them wherever they are at this
Mhm.
point.
So, Lexi, when we were talking on Zoom and we met just the other week there, you'd both mentioned to me and to the media about your show that you both are Indigenous, obviously, but yet you've spent your entire lives off the reserve. Are you using the show to connect back to those Indigenous roots? Do you think it's a common struggle for a lot of Indigenous people who've experienced a similar situation as you? Can you kind of talk to that struggle and how the podcast is helping with this situation?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in essence, we are using the show to connect back to our roots. I think being able to create these conversations, invite guests on that have different Indigenous perspectives has created the opportunity to connect, to find new cultural beginnings and to connect to our Indigenous identity in that way. I think mainly like population now, lots of people don't necessarily grow up on the reserve. There's lots of Indigenous individuals, lots of Indigenous young people in urban settings, and that's what they're growing up with. So I think the main goal of the podcast is not necessarily to connect back to our roots, although that's a great opportunity if that comes along, but it's to create this like sense of community. I have this quote hanging in my room above my desk, and it's also like something I thought about when we were creating what we're doing now. And it says, we are who we're longing for." And during university, I grew up primarily and in high school, my main group of friends and the main people I were around were Caucasian and not necessarily Indigenous. So I didn't have a lot of representation in the people that I surrounded myself with. And I think this created a bit of an identity issue as far as like me not giving myself the importance to be my Indigenous self. I would negate that aspect and just conform to whoever I was around. And so I think I continued to resent that idea. And then it wasn't until past university where I learned a few things in university through my education about the Canadian history and about what being Indigenous is all about, where I started to reach out to find an Indigenous platform to be like, what does being Indigenous mean to me? And who is my community? Because I turn to my reserve, but I don't necessarily know people on my reserve, and I don't have the connections there to be able to go back and feel necessarily like welcomed. And so I think where I turned to was Instagram. I started following a bunch of Indigenous people across Canada, these like social media influencers or these knowledge keepers. And I found like a lot of comfort in that. And my community, my Indigenous community has been built from social media and online platforms. And so I think that is kind of what we're trying to do with this show here. And that's what we're trying to come back to, is creating a community for other Indigenous youth who don't necessarily feel like they have their own community in their backyard. So they can be a part of theirs.
I can totally agree to that sense. Although I grew up on the reserve myself, I'm probably off the reserve 10 years now, 10, 11 years. But the idea of actually learning more off the reserve than on is kind of what I'm going through right now, where this show is a great educational platform for me, and I'm using it to learn more about Indigenous history, culture. And it's not to say that I wouldn't have learned that on reserve, but it's just the way my life has been and sort of my educational and career path that I'm now, 10 years later, learning a lot more than what I would, and that has to do with the online community. So I really appreciate you bringing that up too, because I noticed like on TikTok and Instagram, there's all these amazing Indigenous dancers and hip hop artists that are just capturing everybody's attention, not just Indigenous people. So it's a really cool new community, and I'm glad you brought that up. That's really cool. Alicia, I just had a question regarding where do you see yourself with this podcast, in the next 3 to 5 years? I understand Lexie is venturing off to do a new adventurous job of picking trees, so I heard there's a little bit of a loss there, but if you want to tell me, what do you see for this podcast? Obviously, the society is going to go on too, right?
So I envision the Comeback Society as its own, becoming a standalone nonprofit where it's a building and people can come, and we're going to be a community, center. And the podcast, I truly hope and I believe that we're going to continue to produce episodes, and we're going to continue to highlight the Indigenous people and have these important conversations. And although Lexie's going tree planting, we're trying to figure out a way that she can still kind of be on the show.
Get her a satellite phone.
Yeah, that's what we're looking at. Because we are trying, her and I, we're two very separate people, but we bring such different perspectives in it, and it makes it one. And so I don't believe the show will be the show without my sister.
Imagine just listening to that and just like, okay, I got Lexie on the line in the bush. That'd be awesome.
So we're hoping she'll stay there. If not, I was kind of thinking we might even put it out to our viewers to see if we could get any of our viewers to come and be a co-host just for a couple months while she's gone, just to see, or I'll just run the show myself and we'll see.
Maybe if you wait a couple more months, your son will just start babbling away and he can do it with you.
Yeah, he'll have already heard all of the conversations, so
Yeah,
he'll know.
He already knows. He has the tone. He might not get the words right, but he'll be there.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, it sounds like you guys have been quite successful so far. You're getting a lot of response from Canada, but also around the world. And that's the best thing about a podcast. It doesn't become this regional FM or AM frequency. It becomes this universal worldwide frequency that anybody can tune into. I know ourselves with Our Native Land, I find we're getting people from Sweden and Norway, just places who I would never think would even click. Maybe it's by accident, but they click nonetheless. Final question super quickly, Lexie. Where can people listen? How can they get on the podcast and enjoy your show?
You can listen wherever you find your podcast. So we're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, and Castbox right now under the Comeback Podcast. And you can find us on Instagram at The Comeback Society, on Facebook at The Comeback Society as well.
Okay, and that's very important, right? The Comeback Podcast. If you just write The Comeback, there's this crime show, and it's not you guys. I've learned that the hard way. The Comeback Podcast. All right, well, thank you so much, Alicia and Lexie. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day and talk to me and talk about your show and your lives and your education. It sounds like you guys are on a great path so far, and I'm excited to be on your show as well, which is going to air next week after this show, and I'm super excited to talk to you guys. A roundtable format is something that I've always wanted to try, so I'm really looking forward to it.
Awesome.
Yes, we're also looking forward. Oh.
That's okay. You both are. That's good. That's a relief. Thank you so much, ladies, for coming on to Our Native Land, and we will see you soon.
Yes, see you soon. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.